Dragon Age the Veilguard is out and the first reviews are there, and it is really not looking so great. Many people are logically asking themselves what impact this will have on Mass Effect and the future of Bioware. Mike Gamble has addressed these worries on October the 28th on his Twitter account, or X as it's now called. And as you can see, he wrote, "Both are from the studio. Mass Effect is Mass Effect. How you bring a sci-fi RPG to life is different than other genres or IPs and has to have different kinds of love." Well, while the future, I think, as of now is really uncertain, there is still an option that a next Mass Effect game will happen. And in that case, I did review what are the positives and the negatives from the previous games and what would be great to see in the next Mass Effect game. Regarding the Mass Effect Andromeda game, and that's where I just currently ended the playthrough. That's one of the things which is like very fresh in my memory. The original trilogy, I did play Mass Effect 3 last year about this time in September, October, November, and I just refreshed my memory, but Mass Effect 1 and 2, that's quite a few years since I have played those, so at least what I'm going to compare to is mostly what I remember from Mass Effect 3 and then now from Mass Effect Andromeda, my impressions. There was a good discussion which I had with one of my subscribers on the last vid which I've posted, so the last part of the Mass Effect Andromeda playthrough. I actually might pull up that one on the screen. He wrote to me, the Andromeda could have been a fantastic, believable gateway to a new Mass Effect series, new galaxy, new timeline, many opportunities. It is said the opportunity was wasted over relatively minor issues that grew to be major with exposure. In a story and dialogue-driven game, the facial animations were like a large stone in the toe of your shoe, unignorable, and I completely agree with you on that one. The quippy and sometimes insipid dialogue, much the same. This game could have been so much a shame it wasn't. And I wrote back, yeah, it is the same what bothered me as well. There were a few more things which I honestly have to highlight, and I will be going through those as well. To be honest, that finale felt a bit uncreative. And some parts didn't make much sense. How could the cat abduct the Hyperion from the Nexus where it was firmly docked? Why not attack the whole Nexus? So that was really like something that just logically didn't make much sense to me, to be honest, in the end. And then the finale was basically, let's throw now at the player all the known types of enemies for a few minutes in a tight space. And that was it. I was looking forward to fight the Archon, and in the end we didn't. Comparing it to the original Mass Effect trilogy, there it made sense to fight the Reapers via proxies. You cannot find something that's like a few kilometers tall, logically. But with the Archon it could have been an epic battle. In the end you just watched him die. And I think that was just like, yeah, like I said, very uncreative and not something that wasn't really expected from my side. It was just a letdown, I think. So another wasted opportunity, I believe. If you remember also that huge stranded remnant ship on Eladan, that could have been also an interesting way of giving us a few more glimpses into that civilization. Aside from that, I have more issues with the game, but those are relatively minor and really, some are really subjective. It wasn't a bad game. I had fun playing it, but it just had very observable downsides, but that impacted the immersion and the overall impression. And I also replied to Carly. Carly was asking me as well. She was asking me about my overall impressions, and I said I would give it about 7 or 7.5 out of 10. So as I said, I don't think in general it was a bad game. It wasn't. It was still fun to play, but there were these little details, as John mentioned, which in the end were so obvious that it really left you with a like bad feeling. So I have prepared basically based on this some points which I would like to see in the new game if Bioware makes it. And I just split it in a couple of like sections. One of them would be the combat. And what I really liked were those jump jets. That was something innovative, something new in Mass Effect Andromeda comparing to the original trilogy, and I really like those. Although I wasn't using them that much in the combat, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I have seen people online when I was checking the gameplay later when I finished. I was checking out other people who were playing the game, and they were using the jump jets way more than I did. I usually use them when I was just walking or jumping through the environment. But in general, it was a good idea, and it was, I think, something new and innovative for the game. So I really like those, and I would love to see those as well in the next game. The downsides for me here in the combat were the inability to control the companions in terms of weapons and abilities. So basically your companions had each of them just one standard weapon that they had from the start of the game. Yes, the weapons were like increasing their damage, just like they were increasing their abilities and health and shields and everything, the companions. But still, I would like to give them like a different weapon. So this was something that was really good in the original trilogy, and I would really love for Bioware to go back to that one so that we are able to give them, I don't know, a different armor or a different set of clothing and definitely different weapons. Because for some of these characters, I don't think that they had really like good weapons, and they could have done much more damage if they had something different. So that was one of the things, and the inability to control them, especially for me, where I've noticed when it was bothering me. I usually, at least in the original trilogy, I loved to flank my enemies. So basically I told my companions to stay in a certain spot or order them to certain spots, and then I went around and started to fight the enemies from a different angle. And it was, from a tactical point of view, much more fun, and it was much better for me to play this way. Basically, when you are not controlling your companions, you lost the ability to flank, because whenever you are moving somewhere, your companions automatically follow you. So you are always in the same spot, and it was noticeable, especially in some of the places where I wasn't really happy about it. Of course, the next downside is something that I have already mentioned also for Veilguard, and that's why I don't really have that much hope for the next Mass Effect game that they would be changing anything. So we have seen in Mass Effect Andromeda the, downskilling, or the ability to only have 3 skills actively in combat. I think that was a downgrade compared to the original trilogy. I really would have liked to have more skills. And for me, it also didn't make any sense then. Why does the game give you a ton of points to allocate into skills if you can really only actively use 3 in the end? So thanks. I had no use for the skill points in the end, and I just didn't even bother to allocate them anymore, because for me, like I said, it didn't make sense. That was something that was for me like tedious. Yes, you had the option like switching between profiles. You could make like different profiles where you would allocate different skills. Nah, especially in this type of combat as Mass Effect Andromeda had, unusable. If I go with 3 skills into the fight, I'm going to use those. And if I have like long cooldown times, I'm not even able to use those. So basically the whole point of the missions just became a simple like shoot them all, and that's it. Like use your weapon and just from time to time your skills, and wait until the cooldown period is over. So it was something that I wasn't so fond of. And it was actually already criticized by most of the players when Mass Effect Andromeda came out, that people were not really happy with just this downgrading to free skills. And unfortunately, what we are seeing now in Dragon Age the Veilguard is that actually the game is, again, just having free skills. So I don't really have any, let's say, positive outlook for the next Mass Effect game, that they would actually really listen to the people and go back to more skills. So that's something that I see quite negatively. What I did see positively and negatively at the same time, so I'm kind of torn on this one. There was this ability to invest in Mass Effect Andromeda into different skills, which were not like class locked. So you could technically, even if you were not officially a biotic, you can invest in biotic skills, or you could invest in tech skills, even if you were not, I don't know, an engineer. So that was something that I could see positively, at least for me, like for my play style, because I usually put a lot of skills into defenses, and whether the defenses are tech or biotic based, I don't care. I would like to have them all. On the other hand, we are losing then this individuality of these classes. In the original trilogy, when you chose to be a soldier, you didn't have any biotic abilities, for example, right? So you really had to rely upon what was possible for your class. And if you were an engineer, again, you didn't have biotics. And again, if you were a biotic, you didn't have some other stuff. So I think it was better defined, the classes. And I think it was more like believable what's possible and what's not. So I'm kind of torn on this one. I did like it. And on the other hand, I think we are losing this uniqueness of the classes, I would say. Yeah. Question mark here. I wouldn't be opposed to having the same option in the next game. Weapons and inventory. First thing which came to my mind, and that was simply because I did the playthrough of Mass Effect 3 the last time with the M11 suppressor pistol. I would have loved to have this pistol in Mass Effect Andromeda. Unfortunately, it wasn't there. What was a little bit confusing, at least from the start, then I got used to it, but they basically removed these separate pistols and SMGs categories and just put it all together under pistols, which didn't make much sense to me, because an SMG is something completely different than a pistol. And then also the SMGs were shooting only 3 rounds, and that's a complete nonsense. I didn't really like that one. Yes, you could fix that with, I think, if you invested in some research and development and had something extra on the weapon installed. But still, it shouldn't be even like starting in the first place with this option that you only can shoot 3 rounds. That's not an SMG. Come on. So yeah, that one was quite negative. What I have noticed is that the disruptor ammo, or all these different types of ammo, which I had in my inventory, I had no clue how to apply them onto the weapons. So that was something that was better in the original trilogy. You knew exactly how to activate them, and you can even see every time when you activate them, you can see it on your weapons that it's active, because it's like a small symbol or a sign above the weapon. So I was missing that one. I will be honest. Maybe I just don't know how to do that. I never figured it out. I gave up after a certain time, but it's a pity, because there were specialized like ammo types and I wasn't even using them. So yeah. And what I was missing, but that's like small, little, really nitpicky thing. I was missing a fire range in the game, which I had, for example, in Mass Effect 3. I would have loved to test out some weapons, so I had enough like research points, where I could have actually developed more weapons and just, test them out and see which one is the best for me and go ahead with that one. For now, I had to rely upon, people online who were like advising which weapons to use. But I would have loved to test it out myself. And I just didn't want to do it like when I'm planet side somewhere. So keep going out somewhere, shoot into the distance somewhere and then go back again to the loadout and change. So I found it a bit tedious. I did try something like that in the beginning, but like I said, it was a little bit tedious. So I was missing the firing range. The companions. I would have loved to have like additional companions or optional companions for some of the missions. It would have been more fun, not just like the standard companions that you could take. So we only had like 6 companions, but it would have been more fun like to go with some of the other people as well. So yeah, I was missing this option. It was possible, for example, in Mass Effect 3, so you could have taken like Rex in the DLC, in the Citadel DLC, to some of your like fights, and that was really awesome. Also, you had this like fight arena in the DLC, so you could like play with Grunt and with Rex and with all of these characters that were coming from the previous games. So I was lacking something like this here in Mass Effect Andromeda, and I would really be thankful if there would be something like this possible in the next Mass Effect game. What I found quite positive was that aside from loyalty missions, of course, it makes sense in loyalty missions to take the companion with you whose loyalty mission it is. But aside from that, what I've noticed in Mass Effect Andromeda, they were not like forced upon you. So there were a ton of missions where you could just basically decide to take whomever you want, and you were not forced to take somebody specific. I remember there were a couple of missions on Havarl, for example, where I just thought, okay, it might make sense to take Jal with me in Mass Effect Andromeda, but I didn't have to. I wasn't forced. So I found that very positive. That one was really positive for me, and I would really like to see something like that as well in the next Mass Effect game. And the downside for me was the lack of customization, which I have already mentioned before. The armor, clothing, keep wearing the same all the time, whether on board of the ship or off board the ship. They were just wearing all the time all the same things, and after a couple of hours it just it gets a little bit boring. Character customization. I found it quite funny that you don't have in Mass Effect Andromeda a separate slider for eyebrow color. I know this is a tiny little thing that most people are like, yeah. But if you make a character with a specific preset, and that character has, I don't know, in that preset, let's say black eyebrows, and you give the character blonde hair, it's just looking awful, yeah, or vice versa, right? So I was missing that one. I think it was just a simple oversight. I am hoping that this is something that they will not repeat again. They really need to like make sure that at least like the basic stuff is available. And now I come back a little bit to Veilguard. Also, if you are making the character customization, what I really like on the Mass Effect games, we didn't have this stupid body type A, body type B, where you couldn't make anything bigger on a woman like a B cup, and where when you made when you chose a character, it actually had a good looking ass. But yeah, if I was playing as a female shepherd, at least she looked like a nice looking female. So yeah, I really appreciate on the Mass Effect series, what we have seen so far was that they really like still kept these normal female, male body types. Shepard looked, whether it was a female Shepard or male Shepard, actually really looked good, unlike what we have seen in the Veilguard character creator. So I'm really hoping that they are going to continue with that one, even though, yeah, like I said, I'm not really having that many positive thoughts about it in the future. And then also what I was enjoying in the original Mass Effect trilogy, which I think will not happen anymore, was there were not these stupid pronouns. Yeah, sorry if I say it this way. Old-fashioned traditional lady. Yeah, I can't stand this pronoun nonsense. I'm sorry. That was a good thing on the original trilogy, but as we could see already, I'm not sure if you have noticed, it was in the media 1 or 2 days ago that they have created a board game, Mass Effect board game. And suddenly all of the characters in the board game have like pronouns. So Liara, even though she was always a female, and it is also in the lore and canon that Asari are a female race, suddenly she is she/they. So yeah, they have created in Bioware somebody, at least like somebody who can be a they/them. Yeah, what can I say? It's just, I hope something that will not repeat, but I am not so sure. At this point in time, if they are going to create another game, it will be just the same as we have seen in Veilguard, unfortunately. One thing that didn't happen in the original Mass Effect games, which was only available in the multiplayer, was that you could play as a different species. And I think that one was missing. I would really love to see that, and I would really love to have this option to play as a different species, whether it's, I don't know, Turian, Solarian. In the multiplayer, it was possible. I have seen a couple of people playing the multiplayer and post vids about it online, and it was really fun to watch. And I would have appreciated something like this in the single player game as well. So I'm hoping that there will be an option like this in the next Mass Effect game. Exploration is the next section that I have. And yeah, again, something very subjective. I am not fond of driving around in a vehicle. You can probably see it on my playthrough. I'm just a crappy driver. I am just not so great. So I would be happy if we would have the option like of planetary exploration with, some kind of combo like we seen in Mass Effect 3. So you had like a probe which could send down to the planet, and then basically we were exploring or going on foot. So yeah, I would be very happy if I would never again see a vehicle. But yeah, I'm probably one of the very few. The open world in Mass Effect Andromeda was a bit too much. So what I would really appreciate in the next game would be kind of something like in between what we have seen in the original trilogy and between the Mass Effect Andromeda game. I know that the original trilogy was pretty much like streamlined, so you have only certain paths open when you're in an area, how you can go from point A to point B, and there's not really that much opportunity to look around and explore. I was missing it a little bit in the original trilogy, and then they went like overboard in the Mass Effect Andromeda game and gave us the exact opposite. So you've got a huge, vast open world, and not just one, but like multiple. Every single planet was open world. And it was like packed full with enemies and quests and missions and everything, and it was just too much. I think it was really too much. Somewhere like a middle ground would be nice. If they would find like a middle ground, I would be really happy about it. And yeah, the respawning of enemies, and that's when I was like, oh, this is becoming kind of futile. When you were driving through an area, or when you were walking through an area on Mass Effect Andromeda, the enemies were respawning so fast that basically you just clean out an area, walked away, for 1 or 2 minutes, turned around, and all the enemies were back. It was just too fast. And it was like, after a while, I had the sense like, okay, this was good for nothing. So I didn't even bother in the end. I was just driving through the enemies and through the areas, and I didn't even bother to stop. It was just getting too much. So I would appreciate if there would be an open world or a half open world, that it would not be having enemies that respawn like instantly. Because it's kind of a frustrating feeling, to be honest. Romances. What I found very positive was in Mass Effect Andromeda, actually, when they moved away a little bit from what was in the original trilogy, and it was the clear systems of indicating when you are actually engaging in a romantic option, because you had this heart in the dialogue wheel. And I really appreciated that, because in the original trilogy, and I remember especially in Mass Effect 1, yes, I was just trying to be nice to everyone. And I was talking nicely to everybody, and suddenly I hear like Caden and Liara screaming at each other because they thought like Shepard loves them both, and they thought that I have to decide now like whom I'm going to romance, and I didn't really want to romance any one of them. I was just trying to be nice. So being nice equaled immediately in like starting a romance, and yeah, it wasn't so great because you had no clue that actually something like this is going to happen. So I did appreciate the Mass Effect Andromeda indicator, the specific wheel, dialogue wheel option. So that one was very positive. I hope that they will implement this as well going forward. On the other hand, the downside was, at least for me, it was the lack of interesting or likable, let's say, romantic options if you are a straight woman. And I will now say again, straight woman. I'm not saying the characters which you could romance were not interesting, all of them, or they were not likable. They were, but as a straight woman, when I'm playing as a female, I want to have a romance with a male counterpart, and those that were there, yeah, I didn't really find them so great. I choose in the end Reyes, and basically he lied to me, so I didn't even continue in the romance. I don't know, it was just not so great, considering when I compare it with the original trilogy, you had really interesting characters there. The romances were also like more, I would say, mature. Or the characters were more mature. I'm not sure if that would be the right way to say it, but yeah. So that's regarding the romances from my side. I could never have romanced PB. She seemed age 16 to me. It was the same for me as well, like for example with Liam or with Gil. I felt like I'm talking to a teenager. It was just not something that I would be interested in from a romantic point of view. So yeah, I think it was the same for men when talking about the female companions. So races and aliens. I would really appreciate if we would see some new aliens races, and I was kind of disappointed in Mass Effect Andromeda that we can only see 2 new ones. So it was the Cat, which were like the main enemy, and then we had, the... Oh, good Lord, what's the name of Giles people? I don't remember now. Yeah. Main aliens, new ones, and I just forgot it. Okay, but you are aware of what I mean. It made sense in logically, if I was then thinking about it. Okay, it is just a cluster. It's not an entire galaxy. Okay, maybe in that specific cluster there's like only one species, and then we heard, okay, basically the people who created the remnant technology, they have created basically all the worlds there and the species, so naturally it made then more sense. But in general, from a trilogy or a perspective, we have seen a lot of more of the species in the original trilogy. I would have loved to see more species as well in the next game. at least introduce some new ones. I'm sure that people will be enjoying seeing back again the same ones like the Krogan and the Salarian and the Turian and the Asari. But give us some new ones, okay? And regarding the new ones, regarding the cat, I would really appreciate if I would see an enemy that doesn't look like a cute plushie, because that's what the cat looked like to me, honestly. An enemy that's like the main antagonist in a game shouldn't look like, you just want to pet it. So I would really appreciate if you would have like a sense of danger from your enemy or from your opponent, and not this kind of cute look like E.T., like I called the Archon. And a little bit of a downside for me was the Asari, definitely. The Asari all had the same face. I have noticed it after a while, and when I started to play, and I just wasn't sure if it's just like my subjective view or not. And then as I went through the game, I have noticed that it's actually true. Every single Asari you see has the same face, and for me at least, it was very immersion breaking. If you look at the original trilogy, the Asari had individually minor differences, but they had different face. And I do understand if you see, like, let's say, copy-pasted the same face on, for example, I don't know, the Krogan or the Turian because of what they look like, right? So there's not really a big distinction between them. Okay, kind of makes sense, but the Asari have basically like a human face. So I would have expected to see like little changes in their faces. They could have made at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 NPC Asari and just, use those, but they just copy-pasted one face. And that's something that I really didn't like. I'm not sure if it was because the game was rushed in the development or if they didn't want to waste time on that. I don't know. I also thought all Asari looked the same in Andromeda, save PB. Exactly. So PB was, but because she was the companion, I think because she was such an important figure, they gave her a different face. And as you could see, I have modded her, so she has a different face as well in my playthrough because it's a modded face. But in general, she was the only one who had like a different face. And like I said, it was immersion breaking for me when I have seen the same face. Even Lexi. At least Lexi, they could have made a different face for Lexi, and even Lexi had the same face. It was kind of disappointing, to be honest. Dialogues and choices. I was missing Paragon Renegade options. I will be honest. I was missing those. I just wanted to play like the badass, and you don't really have that option. You have like basically either a yes or a no reply, and just in 4 different ways. But it's still the same reply, so it's not really... I was missing that. I was missing the Paragon Renegade options really a lot. I would have loved for them to return. Yeah, what was a little bit... It was noticeable as well, I mentioned it in my playthrough. You started to, or you wanted to initiate the dialogue with somebody. You had this, E, and I just clicked on it and I couldn't. So you had to stand in a specific angle next to the person you wanted to talk to, and only then you could actually activate the dialogue. And then if that person was just currently moving, you were so unfortunate that actually the person moved out of the view. You were just staring at a wall and talking to a wall the whole time. And it happened to me a couple of times. It's in the playthrough. And I was even commenting on that, like, oh, come on, no. It was just awful. So I wasn't so fond of that. And I'm really hoping for them to fix something like this in the next Mass Effect game, so that you can initiate the dialogue even if you're standing behind someone's back. It was possible in the original trilogy, I'm pretty sure. At least if you came, for example, to the gunnery where Garrus was, he was standing always with the back to the door, and you could still initiate a dialogue with him. So even from like someone's back. And that was not possible here in Mass Effect Andromeda, and it was really kind of weird trying to find the angle where you can start a dialogue. There were some unclear dialogue wheel options. So basically there was something like, I don't know, dialogue option said, let's go to point A and I don't know, let's have a drink. And when you clicked on that, it was like, okay, I'm too tired to go anywhere. So just to give you an idea, there was a completely different answer behind what was written on the dialogue wheel. And sometimes I was surprised, like, why is the personal rider, why is the person now saying something different than what I actually wanted to say, what the dialogue wheel said. So there were like logical inconsistencies between the short version in the dialogue wheel and between what the person then actually really said, and I'm hoping that they are going to fix that as well. They should make it more clear what the dialogue option means, actually. Unfinished conversations, party banter. I think this is something that they now fixed already in Dragon Age Veilguard. So I am hoping that they will also do this in the next Mass Effect game, and that is actually to make sure that the party banter does not get interrupted and then never finished. That was like a pain point for me when I was playing. I was listening to something very interesting happening, and suddenly they stopped in the middle of the sentence because something happened on the screen and they never finished the discussion. And I was like, oh, come on. That one was interesting. I would have loved to hear that. So I'm happy that they fixed this, at least already for Veilguard, and I'm hoping that they will do it as well in the next Mass Effect game. In Andromeda, the dialogue felt useless, didn't matter. Yeah, I think it was like pretty much, like I said, they give you like 4 answer options, but all 4 of the options were basically the same, just in different words. It didn't feel like you have a different choice. So you could make a choice either for A or for B, and then from there the story would go in a different way, or maybe that choice would have had an impact somewhere later on. Basically, you missed that opportunity because you only could reply one and the same thing, like I said, in 4 different manners, and the outcome was always the same. So I agree with you on that one. It was pretty much useless as it was. Saving, gameplay, and controls. I grouped this together. Manual saves available at any time, no block on the saves for hours. That's what happened to me in the beginning when you are starting to play. Whenever you were playing in Mass Effect Andromeda, a main mission, you were absolutely unable to do a manual save, and I was like going crazy because mainly those main missions took a long time. Yes, you had this auto-saving running in the background, but it was at like after a specific time, no matter in which point of the game you were. And I would have rather appreciated to have a manual save option to save in a specific point before I move ahead. So that one was a little bit something that I really didn't appreciate. Although I have to say, like, the auto-saving was working fine. So I cannot say anything bad about that one. Minimap. I think the minimap, what I was missing a little bit was the original minimap, which we have seen was giving you at least an idea about the distance as well, like of the objects or enemies or whatever. Now the way how the minimap was done was basically just on top of the screen, and you could see, okay, I have, 2 enemies towards the north. But you had no clue if they are like 5 meters away from you or 50 meters away from you. So it was not really helpful, to be honest, that minimap. I mean, it was and it wasn't. I would have appreciated to have a better idea about the distance. Multiplayer impacting single player, and that is something that I was not appreciating in the original trilogy, at least in the third game, that they have made a lot of the items better if you're playing the multiplayer, and also the general outcome of the game was that you had to gather specific number of war assets, and if you were playing multiplayer, you generally gathered more than you could ever do in the single player game, and I found this really awful because not everybody wants to play multiplayer. People are buying single player games for a specific reason. So I would be hoping that there will be no impact like this in the future as well. I mean, if you want to include some kind of multiplayer, do that by all means. Some people really like that, but it shouldn't have an impact on the single player game experience, and it shouldn't like punish you when you're playing only the single player game. What I found a little bit funny was two things, and it doesn't matter if it's Mass Effect Andromeda or the original trilogy or in general. I think it's a problem in all the Bioware games. It's if you are running, you are not actually running. So it's just giving you the feeling that you are running by how the environment is changing and, you know, this blur effect. So it makes you feel like you are running, but actually the main character isn't. It's not really that much faster as if you would be just normally walking. And then, yeah, I always had fun when you were like in an area after a battle, you killed like, I don't know, 50 enemies, and in 2 seconds the ground was completely clean and there was nothing. Like no dead bodies, no anything. Yeah, at least leave them there for a couple of seconds or for a minute or two. It just looks weird. You kill a lot of people and the ground is completely clean and they are all just gone, poof, vanished into thin air. So yeah, that was something that I found quite funny. No time to even screenshot the carnage exactly. So yeah, it's if you compare it to some other RPGs, at least you have like for quite some time the feeling, oh yeah, I've cleaned out the battlefield. This is my handiwork. Sounds crappy, but it is why I'm playing the RPGs too, right? So I want to see, let's say, the results of my work. Yeah, if the dead bodies disappear like after 2 seconds, it's like they were never there. So yeah. The revive system. Oh yeah, some people have mentioned this also when I was reading the critiques about Mass Effect Andromeda in the original trilogy, and that is actually one positive thing which was in the multiplayer incorporated, where you could basically revive your companions and your companions could revive you, and that is something that is also in some other RPGs, and I would have appreciated to have this actually in Mass Effect. Of course, in Mass Effect Andromeda it was not possible already from the start because you couldn't even control your companions, so how could they revive you? You would have to like lie there and wait until some of them automatically comes to you and does that. If you can control them, you can actually like switch to that particular companion and tell him go and revive that main character. I think this would be a nice feature to have in the next game. So basically it should be like critical mission failure and game over only when you have nobody else to revive you. What else is the Medigel for, right? So I think that's something that I would appreciate to have there. And then use current weapons in cutscenes. Yes, that's something that I was noticing throughout the entire trilogy as well as in Mass Effect Andromeda. Many times in the cutscenes you had like predefined weapons and not really the ones that you were using, which I found a little bit of a pity because again it takes you out of the game. It's a little bit immersion breaking. Nothing major, but it would have been nice to see the actual weapon. Frostbite was the last point which I had regarding gameplay controls and saving. So please, no Frostbite engine. I'm afraid it will be. If the next Mass Effect game will be done, it will be definitely Frostbite, because obviously they used it now even for Dragon Age the Veilguard. So yeah, like I said, it's a pain in the ass for modding. It's a pain because it's clashing with the EA app. And I'm afraid if they will do the next Mass Effect game, it will be again Frostbite engine, which is crappy for facial animations, if you have noticed. Mass Effect Andromeda had really bad facial animations, and when you look at what they've shown so far from Dragon Age Veilguard, it is having also crappy facial animations. The mouths are barely moving when they are speaking, and it's like off rhythm with the voice acting. When the voice acting starts and when you see the mouth moving, sometimes there's like a difference between that, and you notice it. It's noticeable. So yeah, I'm not so fond of the Frostbite engine. The original trilogy, it wasn't done on the Frostbite engine, that's the good thing. So any modding is very easy, and especially on the Legendary Edition. I think they even made the Legendary Edition with that in mind, so that you can apply the mods easier, which are coming in the form of like an additional DLC that you just pop into the game. Story, yeah, that one is like my subjective view, I will be honest. And that's simply because I'm kind of a righteous person or really like by the book kind of person. What I really didn't like on Mass Effect Andromeda, and what was also not available or what was not in the original trilogy this way, was this cooperation with junkies and drug dealers. And there were like rewards when you were stealing in the game. For example, if you remember, there was a model ship in Spender's quarters, and that was not available in any other way, only if you basically stole it from Spender's quarters. So bad behavior was rewarded. I really am not fond of that, to be honest. With the junkies and drug dealers, what I mean, there was this, on Kadara, I think, there was this one quest where you were asked to get a formula, only to realize that the formula is basically used also to create like a drug and sell drugs. And you didn't have an option. You did gather the formula, because it helped us, it helped, I think, Lexi, and it helped the doctors on the Nexus. You then had the formula, and when you met the next time with the original quest giver, there was no option to tell him, I will not give you the formula. It was automatically given to that guy. Like, hey, here's the formula. And I was like, oh, come on. I do not want that. I would not want to give him that formula. He's just going to continue to create more drugs and sell them. I have a problem with that. Okay, it's something individual, but I really do not want that. And to see in a game that you have this kind of like rewarding for bad behavior, yeah, I'm not fond to seeing that. Like, there should be an option always to say no if you don't want to do that. So I am hoping that this is not going to repeat in the next Mass Effect game. Okay, and then we have, like I mentioned, the logical inconsistency in the end of the Mass Effect Andromeda game, which was the Hyperion that was abducted by the cat. I mean, the Hyperion was docked to the Nexus. Why did they not attack the entire Nexus? Why did they like undock the Hyperion and move with it to Meridian? And that one was completely illogical to me. Endless loyalty missions. I really hope that this will be fixed in the next Mass Effect game. I don't mind if like a mission is a little bit longer, in the sense of when one single mission is taking longer, but the loyalty missions here were like, okay, step number 1, then a quarter of the game passes, and then again the companion comes back to you. Yeah, we need to continue in my loyalty mission, and gives you another portion of a loyalty mission, and you are like wondering, okay, how many times do we have to do this? And then you realize some of the loyalty missions are actually like 3, 4, 5 steps, and they end like barely before the end of the final game. Oh, that's a little bit tedious. So I would really appreciate if the loyalty missions would be like shorter, like they were in the original trilogy. Let me end it here regarding the comparison for the Mass Effect games and what would be, let's say, my wish list for the next game. I think the biggest question mark is what I have is if they're really even going to do that. And if they are going to do that, how they are going to deal with the decisions we have all made in the previous trilogy and in Mass Effect Andromeda, because they already said that they want to do the next game as a compile all the decisions and all the gameplay from the previous games. And if you look at just the original trilogy, how many options you had as an outcome, and then plus on top of that Andromeda, I have absolutely no clue how they want to put it all together in one game as a starting point for the next game. I am a little bit afraid they will be handling it exactly as they did now in Veilguard with the Dragon Age decisions. Basically, they ignored the first two games, and then you only had 3 choice imports from the third one. Yeah, and basically they have ignored all of your decisions this way, or majority of the decisions. I'm not sure if I'm happy about what they did, and if this is an indicator how they are going to proceed in the next Mass Effect game, then I think a lot of people will be unhappy with how they how they handle these decisions and how they start the next game. So yeah, that would be it for this section for the Mass Effect games.